When a billionaire's world of wealth meets a waitress's heart, one simple hug changes everything forever. The afternoon was warm, and the city park was filled with the usual laughter of children running around, chasing one another on the playground. Parents sat scattered on benches, some watching closely, others distracted with their phones. Among them was Ethan Reynolds, a man known across the city as one of the most successful businessmen. A billionaire whose name appeared often in the news. He sat on the edge of a wooden bench, dressed sharply even in his casual wear, holding a phone pressed to his ear. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke to one of his associates about an upcoming deal. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, little girl with golden curls and a smile that melted hearts, was playing on the swings nearby. She laughed brightly as she pumped her small legs, trying to swing higher and higher. Ethan glanced up every now and then, his eyes softening whenever he saw her giggle. Yet his attention quickly returned to the numbers and negotiations filling his mind. His world had always revolved around money, strategies, and power, but Lily was the one part of his life that truly brought him peace. He loved her dearly, though. He often struggled to express it in ways she could feel as Lily jumped off the swing. She ran toward the climbing frame, her shoes tapping quickly against the ground. She began climbing with determination, gripping the bars with her tiny hands. Ethan noticed from a distance but didn't move, still stuck in his conversation about contracts and deadlines. For him, business calls rarely waited, and his assistants knew that missing him for even a few minutes could mean setbacks worth millions. Suddenly, a small cry echoed through the playground. Lily had lost her grip near the top of the climbing frame, her hand slipped, her little foot missed the step, and before she knew it, she tumbled down onto the sand below. The fall wasn't very high, but enough to shock her. She landed awkwardly on her knee, scraping it against the rough surface. Tears welled in her eyes instantly, and her soft cry grew into a sob. Ethan froze for a moment, but he had seen her fall, but was still with the phone at his ear. He felt torn between ending his important call and rushing to his daughter. For a few seconds too long, he stayed rooted, his lips moving as he tried to quickly wrap up his business talk. His chest tightened as guilt filled him. He should have been by her side immediately. Before he could reach her, another figure moved across the playground. A young woman, dressed in a simple uniform from the nearby diner, dropped the sandwich she had been holding and rushed straight toward Lily. Her brown hair was tied back in a ponytail, and her eyes shone with worry. She knelt in the sand beside the crying child, wrapping her arms gently around her shoulders. Her voice was calm and soothing, the kind of tone that immediately makes a child feel safe. "It's okay, sweetheart, you're all right. Just a little." "Scrape," she whispered as she brushed Lily's hair away from her wet cheeks. Lily, trembling from both the fall and the sudden shock, clung to the woman as if she had known her forever. Her sobs slowly began to ease as she buried her face into the woman's shoulder. Ethan finally ended his call, tucking the phone quickly into his pocket, and stood up. For the first time in a long while, he felt utterly powerless. A man who could command rooms full of executives and strike billion-dollar deals with a single word, could not comfort his own child in the way this stranger had done so effortlessly. He walked toward them, his steps slow, his eyes fixed on the scene. Before him, Lily was safe, yet she didn't run into his arms as he expected. Instead, she stayed in the waitress's embrace, holding on tightly. That small moment struck something deep inside Ethan. He realized with a pang that maybe he had never given Lily the warmth she needed at such moments. He provided her with the best of everything: schools, toys, clothes, vacations, but perhaps what she craved most was something far simpler: human comfort. A touch, a hug that said, "I'm here." The young woman, still holding Lily, looked up as Ethan approached. Her eyes met his, and for a second, she seemed unsure if she had crossed some invisible line. After all, he looked every bit the man of wealth and authority, not someone who would usually accept strangers touching his child. But Ethan's face carried no anger. Instead, there was something softer, almost vulnerable, that she hadn't expected to see in a man like him. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, his voice lower than usual. He crouched beside his daughter, brushing a hand gently against her small, Back, Lily, sweetheart. Are you all right? Lily sniffled, finally turning to look at her father. But she didn't let go of the woman's arm. Daddy, I fell, she said, her little voice shaky. I know, darling, Ethan replied, his throat tight. I saw. You're so brave. The waitress smiled reassuringly at Lily, then carefully checked her scraped knee. A thin line of blood had appeared, but it was nothing serious. She tore a napkin from her pocket, something she had carried from the diner, and dabbed at the wound gently. Lily winced, but held on. You're going to be just fine, the woman said softly. When I was your age, I felt like this all the time. It heals quickly, and then you'll be running again before you know it. Her words, though simple, carried warmth. Ethan watched closely, feeling an odd mix of admiration and discomfort. He had hired the best nannies, enrolled Lily in the most prestigious activities, but none of them had ever managed to connect with her in this way. It wasn't about skill or training. It was about genuine care, something money couldn't buy. Lily wiped her eyes, her sobs now reduced to sniffles. She looked at the woman and whispered, "Thank you." The waitress gave her a bright smile. "Anytime, sweet girl." Ethan stood there silently, almost as if he were intruding on a bond that had formed in just a few minutes. He couldn't stop replaying the image of his daughter rushing into another person's arms instead of his own. A sharp realization pressed into him, that perhaps he had been present in her life, but not truly there when she needed him most. He finally asked, "Can I?" He reached out his arms toward Lily. Lily hesitated for a second, then slowly shifted from the woman's lap into her father's embrace. Ethan held her close, feeling her small body press against him. For a moment, he closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. He wished he had been the first to comfort her, wished he had reacted sooner. Still, he was grateful. Grateful that someone had stepped in when he had failed too. The young woman rose to her feet, brushing the sand off her uniform. She looked at Ethan politely, ready to step back into her own world, perhaps even walk away without a word. Ethan's voice stopped her. "I owe you," he said sincerely. His usual authoritative tone softened. "Thank you for being there when I wasn't." She shook her head quickly. "You don't owe me anything. She just needed someone close in that moment, that's all." Her humility caught Ethan off guard. Most people he met wanted something. From him, money, favors, connections. But here was someone who asked for nothing, who had simply acted out of kindness. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve and said, "Daddy, she's nice. Can we see her again?" Ethan blinked, surprised at the request. He looked at his daughter's hopeful eyes, and then at the young woman, who seemed equally surprised. Something stirred inside him, a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he wondered if fate had just placed someone unusual and important in their lives. That simple hug on the playground, that small act of comfort, had changed. Something deep within Ethan, he didn't know exactly what it meant yet, but he sensed that life was about to take a turn he had never planned for. After that day in the park, Ethan could not forget the way his daughter had clung to the waitress. It was a simple moment, yet it stayed in his mind far longer than he expected. He kept replaying the sight of Lily burying her face into the young woman's shoulder, seeking comfort from a stranger while he had stood there struggling to react. Ethan was not a man who often doubted himself, but that incident made him question if he truly knew how to be the father Lily needed. The following afternoon, Ethan decided he wanted to thank the woman properly. He had noticed the uniform she wore and realized she must work at the diner just a block away from the park. It was not the kind of place he usually visited. He was more used to luxury restaurants with soft lighting and wine lists thicker than a novel, but something in him wanted to step into her world. If only to understand the kind of person who had comforted his daughter so naturally. He took Lily with him, and they walked into the diner during a quiet hour between lunch and dinner. The bell above the door jingled, and the smell of coffee and freshly baked pies filled the air. The decor was simple, booths lined against the walls. It's a kind of place where regulars came not for elegance, but for warmth and familiarity. Lily's eyes lit up immediately when she spotted the waitress. "Daddy, look, it's her," she exclaimed. Pointing eagerly, Emily Carter, the same young woman from the park, turned at the sound of the child's voice. She smiled, her face softening with recognition. She walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Well, hello again, sweetheart. How's the knee today?" Lily lifted her leg proudly to show that the bandage was still there, but her smile was brighter. "It's better. See?" she said, bouncing slightly. Emily laughed softly. "I'm glad I told you it would heal quickly." She glanced up at Ethan, her expression polite but calm, not showing the nervousness that many people displayed. In his presence, once they recognized him. "And you must be Mr. Reynolds," she said with a slight nod. Ethan returned the nod. "Ethan, please," he replied. "And you are?" "Emily," she said simply. "Emily," he repeated, as if testing how the name felt when spoken. I wanted to thank you for yesterday. I don't think I've ever seen Lily that upset, and you handled it better than I did." Emily shook her head lightly. Any parent would have rushed over if they could. "You were just caught up for a moment. Don't blame yourself." Her words were meant kindly, but Ethan still felt a sting. She didn't know how often business calls had stolen his attention from moments with Lily. He wondered how many other times he had failed without realizing it. They took a booth. Emily handed them menus. Ethan ordered coffee for himself and a slice of pie for Lily, though Lily was far more interested in talking to Emily than in eating. She asked her about the diner, about what her favorite food was, and even about her family. Ethan listened quietly, watching the way his daughter's face lit up with every answer. It was as if Emily had become an instant friend, someone who didn't need to try hard to connect. As their conversation grew, Ethan found himself curious about her. "Do you work here full-time?" he asked. Emily smiled faintly. "Pretty much. I also pick up shifts at a cafe in the mornings. Keeps me busy, but it pays the bills." Ethan tilted his head. "That must be exhausting, working 2 jobs. She shrugged lightly, her tone still gentle. "It's his, but you get used to it when you have to. My younger brother is in college. Help cover his expenses. He's brilliant, and I don't want him to give up his studies because of money, so I do what I can." There was no bitterness in her voice, only quiet determination. Ethan was struck by the contrast between her and the people he was used to dealing with. In his world, everyone wanted more money, more status, more recognition. And here was a young woman who worked tirelessly, not for herself, but for her brother's future. Lily leaned closer to Emily. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked innocently. Emily chuckled. "All the time, but then I remember why I'm doing it. My brother means the world to me. I want him to have chances I didn't." Ethan's brows furrowed slightly. "You didn't go to college?" Emily hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "I had to start working right after high school. Our parents passed away when we were teenagers, so it was just me and my brother. I couldn't think about school when bills needed paying. But that's all right. Life doesn't always go the way you plan." Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight that Ethan could feel. He glanced at Lily, who was listening intently, and then back at Emily. For a brief moment, he wondered what would have happened to his own daughter if she didn't have the safety net of wealth. Would she be as strong as Emily? Could she survive? Such hardships. He didn't want to imagine it. They stayed longer than Ethan intended. He found himself enjoying the conversation, something he hadn't felt in a long while outside of business. Emily didn't treat him with the deference he was used to. She didn't flatter him or act intimidated. She simply spoke honestly, answering questions, laughing at Lily's silly jokes, smiling warmly whenever the little girl tugged at her arm as they got up to leave. Ethan pulled out his wallet to leave a large tip, but Emily stopped him with a gentle shake of her head. "That's too much," she said. I appreciate it, but you don't have to do that. Yesterday wasn't about money. It was about helping a child." Ethan stared at her, caught off guard again. People never refused his generosity, yet here she was, standing firm with quiet dignity. He slipped the money back into his wallet, feeling both frustrated and oddly impressed. When they stepped outside, Lily tugged at his hand. "Daddy, can Emily come to the park with us next time?" she asked eagerly. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked back through the diner's window, where Emily was already taking an order from another table, her smile never faltering despite the long hours she worked. Something about her stayed with him, the way she balanced kindness with strength, humility with resilience. That night, as Ethan tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "I like her, Daddy. She makes me feel safe." Ethan sat quietly beside his daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Safe. It was such a small word, yet it carried so much weight. He could give Lily everything money could buy, but could he truly give her that feeling as naturally as Emily had? He lay awake for hours after Lily had fallen asleep, thinking about the young woman in the diner uniform. He didn't know why, but something told him their paths had crossed for a reason. She had stepped into their lives by accident. But already he could sense that her presence was stirring something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just gratitude anymore, it was curiosity, respect, and a strange hope that maybe, just maybe, she held the key to teaching him how to be more than just a provider. She had shown him what it meant to comfort, to care without expectation. And that simple quality seemed more valuable than all the wealth he had accumulated. The billionaire who had once believed he had everything realized he had overlooked something far more important, and had taken a waitress with nothing but compassion in her heart to remind him. A few days later, Ethan found himself driving Lily back from school when she suddenly asked if they could stop by the diner. She had been talking about Emily almost every day since that afternoon, mentioning little things like how kind she was, or how she wanted to show Emily her new drawing. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but when he saw the sparkle in his daughter's eyes, he couldn't say no. So instead of heading straight home, he turned the car toward the small corner diner. The bell over the door jingled again as they walked inside. Emily was there, balancing a tray of drinks while greeting customers with her usual warm smile. Lily immediately spotted her and waved excitedly. "Emily," she shouted, her voice filling the room. Emily turned, surprised but happy, and quickly made her way to their booth once she had set the tray down. "Look who's here," she said cheerfully. "How was school today, Lily?" Lily climbed into the booth and began chattering about her day, telling Emily about her teacher, her friends, and even the silly song they had sung in class. Ethan watched silently, his hands folded on the table. He couldn't help but notice how easily Emily gave her attention, as if nothing else in the diner mattered in that moment. That simple ability to listen fully was something Ethan rarely experienced. Even among adults, when Emily walked away to take another order, Lily leaned across the table and whispered, "Daddy, I really like her. She talks to me like she knows me." Ethan gave a small smile. "Yes, she does seem to understand you." As the evening went on, Emily checked in on them whenever she could. Ethan finally ordered dinner there, not because he particularly enjoyed diner food, but because it gave Lily more time with Emily. He noticed the way other customers treated her with friendliness and respect. She wasn't just another waitress to them. She was part of the place, part of their lives. After finishing their meal, Ethan walked up to the counter to pay. Emily came over, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I hope everything was good." She said it was, Ethan replied. He hesitated, then added, "You have a way with people, especially with Lily. She doesn't open up that quickly to just anyone." Emily looked slightly embarrassed. "Kids just want someone to listen to them. That's all. Honestly, I think it comes naturally because of my brother. I raised him since he was small, so I guess I learned patience." Something about the way she said it, with quiet honesty, made Ethan pause. He was used to people trying to impress him, but Emily spoke like she had nothing to prove. That made him curious and uncomfortable at the same time. In the days that followed, Lily's attachment to Emily only grew stronger. Whenever Ethan mentioned going to the park or the diner, Lily's face would light up. Soon, Ethan found himself seeing Emily more often, sometimes at the playground when she had a short break, sometimes at the diner when he stopped by with Lily, but not everyone approved. One afternoon, Ethan attended a charity luncheon at a prestigious hotel. The room was filled with wealthy businessmen and elegant socialites. While he mingled politely, one of his acquaintances leaned close and whispered, I heard you've been spending time at a small diner lately. With a waitress? His tone carried amusement and a hint of judgment. Ethan stiffened. I take my daughter there sometimes. She likes it. The man smirked. Careful, Ethan. People talk. You're a billionaire. You can't be seen wasting time with that kind of company. The words stung more than Ethan expected. Later, when he was alone in his office, he thought about what had been said. Why did it matter to anyone whom he spoke to? Why was kindness considered less valuable than status? Yet he also knew his world thrived on appearances. People watched him constantly, waiting to see if he would slip. Despite the whispers, Ethan couldn't ignore how much happier Lily seemed whenever Emily was around. One Saturday, he took Lily to the park again, and by coincidence or perhaps fate, Emily walked by on her way to work. Lily ran to her immediately, grabbing her hand. Come play with me for a little while before work, she begged. Emily laughed. Just for a few minutes, okay? She kicked off her shoes and joined Lily on the grass, chasing her around and pushing her gently on the swings. Ethan stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching the scene unfold. His daughter's laughter filled the air, pure and bright. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something shift inside him. This wasn't about business or image. It was about his child being happy, truly happy. Emily had something to do with that. When Emily finally had to leave, she waved goodbye. Lily clung to her arm, reluctant to let go. We'll come again. Right. Emily crouched down and said softly, Whenever I can, sweetheart. Ethan walked her a short distance, thanking her again. She shook her head, brushing it off. You don't have to thank me. She's a wonderful little girl. Honestly, I'm glad I get to know her. Something about the sincerity in her voice unsettled Ethan. He wasn't used to people wanting nothing in return. It made him question how much of his life had been built on shallow relationships. That evening back at home, Lily asked him, Daddy, why don't people like Emily? Ethan was taken aback. What do you mean, Lily? Some of the moms at school said she's just a waitress and not a friend for us. But I don't care. I like her. Ethan sat silently for a moment, struggling to find the right words. Could he explain the harshness of society to a child so young? Sometimes people don't understand what really matters, he finally said. But if she makes you happy and she's kind, then that's what's important. Lily nodded firmly. Then I want her to be my friend forever. That night, as Ethan sat alone in his study, he thought about the clash of worlds surrounding him. On one side, there was his high society life filled with polished smiles, fake compliments, and endless ambition. On the other, there was Amelia, a young woman who worked hard, who had no wealth, no powerful connections, but who gave his daughter something priceless, genuine affection. He realized how strange it was. He could buy Lily anything, a new toy, a holiday abroad, even her own playground, but none of it compared to the joy she felt in those simple moments with Emily. And for the first time, Ethan admitted to himself that he envied Emily. She had nothing of what he had, yet she carried a strength and warmth he couldn't replicate. As days turned into weeks, the connection between Emily and Lily deepened. Ethan continued to face questions and disapproval from his peers, but deep down, he knew the truth. For all his money and power, he had never been able to give his daughter what Emily gave her so freely, a sense of belonging, of being truly seen. And though Emily herself was cautious often, pulling back slightly as if afraid of overstepping, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she had become an important part of their lives. She was cautious for good reason. She knew that their worlds were different, that eventually the gap between them might hurt Lily. But even with that fear, she never treated Lily with anything but kindness. Ethan found himself standing at a crossroads he had never expected. He could listen to the world he belonged to, the one that told him a billionaire should never mix with someone like Emily, or he could listen to the laughter of his daughter, the one sound that mattered most, and recognize that sometimes the greatest gifts came from the most unexpected places. And though he didn't say it aloud yet, deep in his heart, Ethan knew which choice he wanted to make. The weeks went by quickly, and Lily's school announced that they would be putting on a small play. It wasn't anything grand, just a performance where the children would dress up, sing, and act out a short story for the parents. For Lily, it was the most exciting event of the year. She practiced her lines in front of the mirror at home, twirling in her costume and asking Ethan to watch. Ethan tried his best, but his eyes often drifted back to his laptop or his phone. When work messages appeared, he clapped and praised her, but Lily could always sense when his mind was somewhere else. One evening, while helping Lily rehearse, Ethan asked if there was anyone she wanted to invite to the play. He expected her to say her nanny, or maybe one of her friends. Instead, without hesitation, she said, "I want Emily to come. She makes me feel brave." The request took Ethan by surprise. He stared at his daughter, her innocent face looking up at him with so much trust. "Emily?" he asked, as though repeating the name would help him process the thought. "Yes, Daddy," Lily said firmly. "She'll be proud of me. Can you please ask her?" Ethan hesitated. He knew how the other parents at Lily's school could be. Itty were people from his world, wealthy, judgmental, always watching. Inviting a waitress might raise eyebrows, maybe even whispers. But then he thought about his daughter's happiness. He thought about how she lit up whenever Emily was around. And so, despite his doubts, he nodded. "All right, I'll ask her." The next day, when he stopped by the diner with Lily, he found Emily behind the counter. After their meal, he asked if she would be willing to attend Lily's play. First, Emily looked surprised. She glanced at Lily, who was watching her eagerly, and then back at Ethan. "I don't know if that's a good idea," Emily said softly. "Your daughter goes to a very different kind of school." "I don't want to embarrass her." "You won't," Ethan said quickly. His voice was firmer than he expected, almost protective. "She really wants you there. It would mean a lot to her." Emily looked at Lily's hopeful face and finally smiled. "All right then, I'll come." The day of the play arrived. Parents filled the small auditorium, dressed in their elegant clothes, carrying cameras and flowers. Ethan sat near the front, his tailored suit sharp against the row of colorful decorations made by the children. When Emily walked in, she looked out of place among the expensive dresses and designer shoes. She wore a simple floral dress, her hair tied back neatly. Some of the parents glanced at her curiously, whispering quietly to each other, but Emily ignored them. She found her seat beside Ethan, and when Lily spotted her from the stage, her face lit up brighter than the lights above. The play began, and Lily performed with all her heart. She said her lines clearly, sang loudly, and even waved at Emily. During one of her parts, Ethan, for once, wasn't distracted. He didn't check his phone. He didn't think about work. He just watched his daughter, and he noticed how her confidence seemed bigger that night, as if knowing Emily was there gave her extra courage. When the play ended, the children ran off stage to greet their families. Lily went straight to Emily, hugging her tightly. "Did I do good?" she asked breathlessly. "You were amazing," Emily replied, her eyes shining with pride. "I'm so proud of you." Ethan stood a step behind, watching the scene. He felt something stir inside him. Again, that same feeling he had experienced at the playground, at the diner, in the park. It was the realization that Emily had given his daughter something he hadn't been able to provide. The kind of emotional support that didn't come from money or status. Later that evening, Ethan offered Emily a ride home. At first, she refused politely, but it was late, and Lily begged, so she finally agreed. As they drove through the quiet streets, Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Lily had fallen asleep against Emily's shoulder, her small hand gripping Emily's arm, as if afraid to let go. "You have a way with her," Ethan said quietly. Emily looked down at the sleeping child and smiled. "She's easy to love. She's kind and full of joy. She just needs someone to notice that." Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I notice. But sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough." Emily hesitated before speaking. "You're doing your best, but she needs you to be present, not just around." Kids don't remember the gifts as much as they remember the moments. Her words cut through him more deeply than she could have known. For years, he had measured his love by what he could provide: clothes, toys, the best education, trips to wonderful places. But maybe Emily was right. Maybe what Lily needed was not more things, but more time, more patience, more warmth. When they reached Emily's apartment, Ethan insisted on walking her to the door. It was a modest building, nothing like the luxury he was used to. He looked around and realized this was her world, one far away from his. Yet she carried herself with a strength that made the place seem less important. On the steps, as she carefully lifted Lily into his arms so he could carry her back to the car, Ethan asked quietly, "Why do you work so much?" "2 jobs. All these hours, it must be hard." Emily looked at him, her expression calm but firm. "Because I don't have a choice. After our parents died, I had to take care of my brother. He was just 13 at the time. I promised him that he would still have a chance to live his dreams, even if it meant I had to sacrifice mine. I wanted to study too, but life decided otherwise." Her voice didn't tremble. She wasn't asking for pity. She spoke as though it was simply her reality, one she had accepted long ago. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had built his empire by taking risks, making bold decisions, and chasing his ambitions. But Emily had built her life on sacrifice, giving up her own future for someone else's. He had admired powerful men in boardrooms, but at that moment he realized he admired Emily more than any of them. "You gave up your dreams for him?" Ethan asked softly. Emily nodded. "Yes, but it was worth it. He's in college now. He studies engineering. He's so smart. Every time I see him succeed, I feel like my sacrifices meant something. That's enough for me." Ethan stood there for a long moment, unable to find the right words. He had always believed strength came from control, from money, from power. But Emily showed him a different kind of strength, the strength of love, of sacrifice, of selflessness. As he carried Lily back to the car, her small head resting on his shoulder, Ethan thought about everything Emily had said. He realized how much he still had to learn about being a father. He realized how much he wanted to understand Emily, not just because she had helped his daughter, but because she had opened his eyes to a truth he had never faced. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Ethan sat alone in his study. His phone buzzed with emails and messages, but he ignored them. Instead, he thought about Emily's words, about her story. He thought about how she had lost so much, yet still gave so much of herself. For the first time in years, Ethan questioned the life he had built, had wealth beyond imagination, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that Emily, with so little, was richer in the ways that truly mattered. She carried love, compassion, and courage, and in her presence, both he and Lily felt something they hadn't known they were missing. Ethan realized then that Emily wasn't just someone who had comforted his daughter on the playground. She was someone who had quietly begun to change both of their lives, and he wasn't sure he wanted that change to end. The cold wind of late autumn brushed against the city, and life seemed to carry its usual rhythm for most people. But inside Ethan's home, something was different. He had been thinking constantly about Emily ever since the night she told him. Her story, her quiet strength, her sacrifices, and the way she loved her brother had stayed in his mind. He had spent years surrounded by people who measured everything by money and status. But Emily had shown him that life was deeper than that. She had given up everything for her brother without expecting praise or reward. That kind of heart was rare, and Ethan could not forget it. One evening, as Ethan returned home from a meeting, he found Lily in her room drawing. She held up a picture she had made with crayons. "Daddy, look. This is me, you, and Emily. We're holding hands in the park." Ethan stared at the simple picture for a long time. A child's drawing, yet it told him everything. To Lily, Emily wasn't just a kind woman she had met. She was part of their lives now, part of their family in Lily's eyes. And maybe Ethan thought his daughter was right. The next week, something happened that brought their worlds even closer. Emily's younger brother, Daniel, who was studying engineering, called her in tears. His scholarship was in danger. The rent for his housing had gone up, and he couldn't afford both rent and books. If he fell behind in payments, he would be forced to leave college. and all of Emily's years of sacrifice would go to waste. Emily tried to stay calm on the phone, reassuring him that she would find a way. But inside, she felt crushed. She was. Already working 2 jobs, barely managing rent and bills, she didn't know where she could possibly find more money. She thought about taking on a 3rd job, but she barely had time to sleep as it was. She didn't want to fail her brother, not after everything. That night, while working a late shift at the diner, Ethan came in with Lily. He noticed the tiredness on Emily's face, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes. After Lily ran off to sit in their usual booth, Ethan leaned closer to Emily at the counter. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. Emily forced a small smile. "I'm fine, just tired." Ethan didn't believe her. He had seen too much in his life to miss the signs of worry. "What is it?" he asked gently. Emily hesitated, not wanting to share her burdens. She hated asking for help, especially from someone like Ethan. But he kept looking at her with genuine concern, and finally she sighed. "It's my brother. He might lose his scholarship. I'm trying to figure out how to cover his expenses before it's too late." Ethan felt a sharp pang in his chest. He could easily write a check that would solve all her problems, but he knew Emily well enough by now to understand she would never accept it if it made her feel small. She had pride and she had dignity. She didn't want charity. She wanted fairness. "I see," Ethan said softly. He didn't push further, but inside, he was already thinking. The next morning, he made a few quiet phone calls. He asked his assistant to reach out to the college board anonymously. He arranged for Daniel to receive an additional grant, disguised as a merit award for his excellent grades. It would cover his housing and books for the year, and no one would know where it came from. When Daniel called Emily 2 days later, his voice was full of excitement. "They gave me a new grant. They said it's for students with high grades who show promise." "Emily, I don't have to drop out. I can stay?" Emily's eyes filled with tears as she listened. Relief washed over her, and she had no idea how it had happened, but it felt like a miracle. She hung up the phone and whispered to herself, "Thank you," though she wasn't sure to whom she was speaking. That evening, when Ethan and Lily stopped by the diner again, Emily couldn't hide her emotions. She smiled more brightly than she had in weeks, her eyes shining.
"Why,
Something wonderful happened today," she told them. She explained about her brother's scholarship being saved. Lily clapped her hands happily. "See? I told you good things happen to good people." Ethan only smiled faintly, saying nothing. He didn't need recognition, didn't want Emily to know he was behind it. It was enough to see her relief, enough to know that her burden had been lifted, at least for now. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Emily grew closer. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't dramatic. It was in the little things, the way they talked while Lily played, the way they shared small laughs about simple moments, the way Ethan asked her questions about life and listened carefully to her answers. He began to open up about his own struggles, how he often felt lost as a father, how he had built his fortune but sometimes wondered what it was all for. Emily never judged him. She listened, and when she spoke, her words were honest. She reminded him that love wasn't measured in money, that time and attention mattered more. Ethan found himself learning from her in ways he had never expected. Lily, of course, was the happiest of all. She often insisted on holding both their hands as they walked in the park. She introduced Emily to her toys, her favorite books, and even asked if Emily could come to her birthday party, slowly without realizing it. Emily became a part of their family's daily rhythm. But the change wasn't just in their routines. It was in Ethan himself. He began to leave his phone in his pocket when he was with Lily, focusing on her instead of business. He started reading her bedtime stories, something he hadn't done in years. He found himself laughing more, relaxing more, and seeing life differently. He knew Emily had brought this change into his life. She had reminded him of what truly mattered, not with lectures or demands, but simply by being herself. By showing kindness, by living with love and sacrifice, she had taught him lessons no boardroom or business deal ever could. One evening, as the three of them walked home from the park, Lily ran ahead chasing fireflies. Ethan slowed his steps. Walking beside Emily, for a long moment, he was silent. Then he said, "You've changed us." Emily looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean? You've shown me what I couldn't see before. That my daughter needs more than just the best of everything. She needs love, patience, and time. And He paused, his voice softening. "I need that too." Emily's eyes softened, but she shook her head lightly. "I didn't do anything special. I just cared. Anyone would." "No," Ethan said firmly, looking straight at her. "Not anyone." For a moment, the world seemed still between them. Emily looked away, her cheeks warming, while Ethan felt something he hadn't in years, a quiet hope, a possibility of a new beginning. That night, after Emily had gone home, Ethan tucked Lily into bed. She hugged him tightly and whispered, "Daddy, are we going to keep Emily forever?" Ethan smiled, brushing her hair back gently. "We'll see, sweetheart. We'll see." As he walked out of her room, he realized the truth. Everything had changed. From the moment Emily hugged his daughter on the playground, life had taken a turn he hadn't expected. He had gone from being a man who measured life in deals and wealth to someone who now understood the deeper meaning of family and love. Emily had not only healed his daughter in a small moment of pain, she had healed something inside him too. And though the future was still uncertain, Ethan knew one thing with absolute clarity. He didn't want to return to the life he had before her, for the first time in a long while. The billionaire who had once believed he had everything finally understood what it meant to truly have something worth holding on to.